Well, this involved a great deal of expense when you had to pay for the minutes, and that was charged like $300, $400 a paper, and you had to pay for a court stenographer. It's a racket. The whole thing is a racket. And but we won, and it was noticeable all over the legal world that a pro se had beat these Park Avenue lawyers, Satterley, Stevens, Burke, and Burke. And what about you in getting close to God? Is this helping you get close to God? No. No, it is not helping me get close to God. Is this helping you with finding the thing in the world that you contribute the most? Were you made to bring lawsuits and win lawsuits in the courts and fight the injustices in the legal system? No. Well, something's got to be done about that. And so, one of the people I sued, and I didn't tell you about, was a Gannett newspaper reporter. The White Plains Dispatch kept telling me he was going to do a story on the chat with Glendora. And he kept interviewing me and interviewing me and interviewing me 6 or 7 or 8 times, and then all of a sudden he says, I'm not going to do the story, with no reason or anything. So I sued him on breach of contract and lost. The judge ruled against it.
Network?
Yes. Cablevision was pulling out of cable casting our show on other systems in the system in the municipality in which we lived. And that was included a number of municipalities that we were deprived of cable access TV. So I started suing them. And they had a lawyer up in Albany, and he came down, and we were before this federal judge in the White Plains Federal Court. And this federal judge announced from the bench, well, we've heard from the plaintiff. And he meant by that previous papers, no court appearance. We've heard from the plaintiff. Now we would like to hear from the defendant. Well, this lawyer was a bunch of rhetoric for 25 or 30 minutes, and Glendora tried several times to give her part of the argument, and the judge would not recognize her. And so, within the hour after that hearing, and there were several cable TV people there wanting Glendora to win, and so within the hour, I appealed that judge's decision. And he says, you're right, that's an appealable order. And I served the defendants, and the judge met me on the sidewalk at noon hour. They were out, sunny day, walking up and down the beautiful sidewalk, very well appointed, in White Plains, and he started talking to me. And I knew enough not to talk back to him. No ex parte. The other side wasn't present. And then I called the judge's office one day to find out about a paper. And that judge came on the phone. And he says, I know that you think that I'm being prejudiced in favor of the defendant. And then he talked about his reasons and this and that. I recorded it. I played it on my TV program. And in the middle of it, the TV system went blank. The cable caster was told to stop it If that wasn't editorial control, what was? So they got sued for that. And I had a tape of it, and the judge ignored that. It was a clear ruling.
12 o'clock p.m., 77 degrees Fahrenheit.
Thank you, little temperature clock. It was a clear case of editorial control, a clear case of breaking the law, federal law. Title 42, U.S. Code 13, whatever. And she just let it go. That's how dishonest these judges were. They didn't care about the truth. The truth meant nothing. It was, how do you manipulate it? How do you get the decision in favor of the people you want it to get to? And you could get to know a judge, and you could feel a judge's friendship, but then in the end, you had to realize that that judge's soul was already sold to somebody else. Well, I don't know how that went on, but the Westchester Supreme Court said plaintiff must be returned to TV, and plaintiff was returned. There was nothing Cablevision could do. And so the program went back on the air. They got a month's stay, and the program went back on the air. But there was never any damages. This lawsuit had cost Franklin. I told you Franklin and I had about $250,000 in the bank that we had made from Glendora TV ads and from his career as a newspaper reporter, a grand newspaper reporter. It was down to $120,000 paying for these crooked courts. What were we going to talk about next, honey?
Bruiser Ken.
Really? Was there anybody before that's a big topic. Was there anybody before that, honey?
No.
That's the last topic?
Yep.
So, we've sued Cablevision again. We sued Cablevision practically every month of the year. We would go to Cablevision's annual meetings. We would make our points there where they were violating our public access TV rights. I remember going to one Cablevision annual meeting, and on the table there were all kinds of flyers to pick up to find out about Cablevision. And here was a stack of envelopes, legal-sized envelopes, this big. And they had the names of the directors on them. And I thought that the directors were giving us the public, so I took one of them, and I opened it up, and it was a check to one of the directors for $1,000. Every one of those directors was getting $1,000 just for attending this meeting, the annual meeting, which lasted about an hour. What were we going to talk about, Bruiser Ken, next?
Yeah, Bruiser Ken.
So I went in Long Island to see the file on one of my lawsuits against Cablevision. And a Pinkerton. Now the courts are filled with Pinkertons. Pinkerton hires retired police officers. They're just loaded with retired police officers with their navy blue blazers and their flannel pants, gray flannel pants. And this Pinkerton took my recorder, my audio cassette recorder, and I said, I want a receipt. And he took this cassette recorder, $250 instrument, he slammed it down on the bench. You ain't going to get no receipt. And I stood there at the, what do you call it, metal detector. And I just stood there. And the next thing I knew, he had taken my arm and he twisted it up in my back, and it was painful. And so I just let everything go and started to fall toward the floor. Franklin had already cleared the metal detector. He was on the other side. And he came and put his body between me and Pinkerton to protect me. And the Pinkerton pulled back his fist and slugged Franklin in the jaw. And Franklin fell through the floor. Now that's the facts. That is what happened. In a federal courthouse. Well, the U.S. Marshal was there. And I got up out of the floor and I said to the U.S. Marshal what had happened. And the U.S. Marshal said to me, "We have some nice, beautiful little rooms downstairs. Would you like us to lock you up in one of those?" So, we went to Cablevision. We got home that night about 11 o'clock. And the next day, I sued this Pinkerton and all the other Pinkertons who had participated in it, and I sued the Pinkerton agency. And this was a civil suit, and the name of it was Glendora versus Bruiser Ken. Want to know why it was Bruiser Ken? His fingers, 4 fingers, 4 of them, imprinted on my arm. Deep, deep, deep black and blue spots. And then there were other black and blue spots. And also, that audio cassette recorder, that little audio cassette recorder was on. And it audio taped him and his comrade saying, "You don't you dare go over there again. You come back here." So we get a call the next day from the FBI, and the FBI says, "We want to help you with your lawsuit against Bruiser Ken. So come down tomorrow at 2 o'clock to Long Island." And then we get a call from the FBI, "Don't come. Repeat, do not come." And then the day after that, we got another call, "Come. We want to help you with this lawsuit against Bruiser Ken." So by now I had filed the lawsuit. It was on its way to the courts, was paid the filing fee and everything. And we went to Long Island, and it was in the basement of a courthouse, and opened the door, and here's 10 men lined up. And one of them says, "You are under arrest." Franklin they separated Franklin and me. One group took Franklin away, and one group took me away. Now, it was a lie. They didn't care that they had lied. It didn't bother them at all. They said they were going to help us with the lawsuit. What they were going to do was to arrest us. And they arrested us for assaulting a court officer. And you hear what the facts are. Who did the assaulting? Who took it? Who took the abuse? Well, one FBI person had a paper, and he put it down in front of me to read, and I'm supposed to know why I'm arrested. And then he'd pick it up. And then I'd say, "Well, let me see that." He put it down, and then he'd pick it up. He did that 3 or 4 times. So then they locked me up in a cell, and they locked Franklin up in a cell. And then they tried to get me to talk, and I wouldn't talk to them. And they said, well, when we get you down in Brooklyn, we're going to ask the judge. We're going to tell the judge that you wouldn't cooperate. And so by now they had a female FBI person for me, 2 of them, I think. And so we all get in the car in Brooklyn, and we all get into the car and drive to Brooklyn. And I say, I'm sitting in the back seat, and I say, yes, you come down to Long Island, and we'll help you with your case against Bruiser Kent. I was making them face the truth, and they turned on the radio so they couldn't hear me. And so we went down, and we were arraigned. And we told the magistrate that our civil rights had been violated all day. They had taken Franklin's tie away from him, and that Franklin never appeared without dressed up in a tie. And Franklin succumbed to a court-paid lawyer. I would not do that. And if I had been with Franklin, I would have advised him not to do it. I was Franklin's counselor. He was my counselor. So we were denied a counselor. And this court-appointed lawyer, or wanted to be, asked me to do it, and I said, I wouldn't do it. And they handcuffed me to a chair, and then they couldn't open the handcuffs. They couldn't unlock them, and they came with a pair of pliers that was this long, and the blades on the pliers were this big. It was really kind of comical. And they took my briefcase, and everything in my briefcase, everything that I own. What's the Fourth Amendment say against seizure? It says that you shall have a list of what is seized, you should have a reason why it was seized, and all those things that the Fourth Amendment says about seizure, violated. And I violated counsel of the counsel of my choice. Well, I could have gone on about their violations and their inhumanity and their lies. You know, you have to be very careful of those people. You don't have to do a thing wrong to get arrested because they lie. They lie that you did this. They just up and lied that you did it. You just saw that lie, didn't you? That we assaulted Bruiser Kent. Well, I don't know how deeply you want to go with this, but it went on and on and on, and court appearances before a magistrate. And if you go to the U.S. court, you're entitled to a United States District Judge. You don't have to go for a magistrate. A magistrate is a teacher's helper. And it went on, and they violated the speedy trial law. You know, you have 70 days before you. If you're not brought to trial in 70 days, then the case is dismissed. Well, they violated that and lied about that. The U.S. attorney, all in all, told them, I kept track of them, told 400 lies. And then he was reporting to the judge what had happened. He had no personal knowledge of what has happened. He wasn't even there. All he was doing was listening to the lies of the Pinkertons. How deeply do you want to go into this? Well, let's cut it short. If you want any more about it, it's all on tape. It's all on videotape. I reported it verbatim, the way it happened. And I reported it on TV, and I showed all the dishonest things that they did and the violations to the United States flag. And here is Franklin, a veteran in the worst part of the war, D-Day, the Battle of the Bulge, Victory in Europe Day, and they're treating him like this, and he hasn't done anything wrong. And he cried for his country. All right, so it came to trial. Glendora still, all right, the judge kept pushing Glendora to have a court-appointed attorney. You want to know why they do that? Because a court-appointed attorney will do anything the judge tells them to do. They won't do what the plaintiff wants or the defendant wants. They won't do a thing with what the defendant wants. They just will do what the judge wants, because if they don't do what the judge wants, they don't get another court-appointed pay. And how much did they make? About $74 an hour. That was then. They were making about $74 an hour. All right, so the trial came. Glendora did her own defense. Glendora did her own cross-examining and cross-examining. Franklin was called as a witness. Franklin was called, and the FBI man was called, and he really didn't speak the way the U.S. attorney wanted him to speak. But the whole thing comes down to this. They get these jurors, and these jurors, outside of their room is a Pinkerton, a great big Pinkerton, and these jurors get scared. If I don't go along with a U.S. attorney, they're going to go after me. How did they rule? That we both were guilty. Yeah. They ruled that we were guilty. One of the people we had to see was Mr. Bigger. And the joke about Mr. Bigger is, who is bigger, Mr. Bigger or Mr. Bigger's son? The answer is Mr. Bigger's son, because he's just a little bigger. Well, so it went. And then came the sentencing. And the judge sentenced, no prison in sentence. It was a misdemeanor. No prison. And by the way, the judge threatened me. Well, why don't you take a lawyer? Why don't you take a lawyer? I said, well, because I've been in the courts for quite a while, and I've had several successful decisions. And she says, but this is criminal. No, I didn't do it then, but I did it later. But the court-appointed lawyer, he really did nothing except try to threaten me and tell me what the judge told him to tell me and threaten me. Okay, what was the sentence? $2,000 fine, Franklin, and $2,000 fine, Glendora, and probation for, I think, 2 years or something like that. Well, Franklin cried and said how hard it was for him, after serving his country like that, to be treated and violated, have his country violated. Oh, and they had this drug testing. And I made a motion to the court. To cease this drug testing. Franklin and I didn't know anything about drugs. To this day, I don't know anything about drugs. I won't even drink coffee or tea. And no smoking, no alcohol, neither one of us. We didn't know anything about these drugs. And so the judge came back with a decision saying, the U.S. attorney says that you have been very good people and you've kept all of your appointments, so we're going to dispense with the drug testing. There was one other incident. About the judge on the sidewalk. It wasn't the judge, it was the law clerks. Bryant was delayed on his decision. He kept delaying. I saw the law clerks out on the sidewalk, and I said to him, hurry up on that decision, make that decision. Well, they tried to turn that into a violation of my probation and lock me up again. And two, I don't know what they were. Anyway, they closeted me in their office And for 2 hours they tried to get me to admit that I kept telling them jokes, and they kept laughing at the jokes and all that, but they tried to get me to admit that I had violated my probation, that I had attacked them verbally. But I didn't, and poor Franklin was waiting out in the waiting room, and he didn't know what had happened to me, or if I was all right, or whether I was going to be unlocked again or what. And so I sued them. And it happened to be a 3-day weekend. I came out of that terrible, grueling examination, and I sued them in the United States District Court in Washington, D.C.